Hi everybody, this is Cody from LearningFuze, and I just wanted to take a quick video to talk about a few of the main struggles I see in early developers and some strategies that I have around getting past those. So honestly, one of the biggest ones early on is that you want to make sure that you're comfortable being uncomfortable, okay? It's really important as a developer to be okay with exiting your comfort zone and shifting to using tools that you may not feel very strong in yet. It's really common for early developers to look at the concepts that are available to study and feel intimidated by some concept and go back to their safe space of the other thing that they love working with, right? And that's fun. I mean, we want to use the tools that are really inspiring for us, but it's also very important to force yourself out of that comfort zone into trying new things. Real developers need to stay growing every day. And if you're sticking to the concepts that you feel most happy working in, then you're not allowing yourself to grow. You need to be comfortable to do things that might seem hard at first. And that actually translates really well into another major struggle that I see early on, which is the fear of being wrong. Oftentimes, early developers are afraid of the possibility that they might be doing code incorrect. And so they avoid even doing the code, right? Where you might see something and you're like, I don't know if I'm doing this right. And then you fall back to something that you feel, again, like you are more comfortable working with. That's something to be avoided as well. I want to make sure that everybody getting into development realizes that it's really absolutely going to be super important that whenever you are trying out new things, you realize that if things go wrong, if something breaks, it's okay. You can write new code, right? It's not going to be a huge loss. Even if it ends up being completely wrong, you still learned something, right? It goes back to that old quote from Thomas Edison when he was learning how to make the light bulb, that after he had all of those failed versions, it wasn't that he had a bunch of failures, he just learned a bunch of ways not to make a light bulb. And that's the same thing we do in code, right? If you do something wrong, it's still valuable knowledge. It's knowledge on how not to do things. So be okay with being wrong. It's totally fine. And on that same note, when you do find that you're struggling with something, when you do find that things are difficult and you can't quite get the code to work, be comfortable asking questions. Be comfortable understanding that you don't know this yet and that you should talk to somebody who does, okay? If you're trying to get through learning code by yourself with no other help from anybody else, it's going to be difficult when you hit a wall. You need to be comfortable reaching out to people in your network that you trust, that might know a bit more about code than you do, and give them questions about the things that you're struggling with to try and get some more knowledge around it, right? A couple other things that I noticed really early. One major thing is oftentimes early developers put too much stock into making sure that their code is just functional, and they don't pay too close of attention to how their code is formatted. That's a really important thing too. Formatting is key to good code. If you're writing code that works but looks like trash, then your fellow coworkers in development are not going to be happy with that. You want to have code that's written to the formatting standards that that language requires, so that number one, it's going to be much easier for you to debug in the future if you follow the right structure for the page and for the code. Then when you need to go and find problems, it's going to be much easier to read your code and understand it. And on that same note, using proper formatting means that your code fits with what other developers expect, so it's easier for them to read as well. So you're setting yourself up as a very valuable developer by making code that looks and is presented in the way that people would expect that language to be in, right? So make sure that when you are writing code, if you're using other code as reference, you're looking at documentation to learn about that concept, pay attention to not only how to use it, but how that code is being written. Indentation, right? Or how the spacing is around certain pieces in your code. It's really important to pay attention to that stuff. And then the other major thing that I see is what might be called shiny object syndrome, where oftentimes early developers are driven to learn what's new and in demand and exciting and cool, pick up like that really fun framework of JavaScript, or try out that new library or package that's being dispersed and people are talking about. And those are really cool, obviously, right? They carry a lot of weight in the community and people get really excited about it. But as a beginning developer, that's not the most important thing to learn right now. The most important thing as a beginning developer is going to be the fundamentals. You really want to dig deep into what makes that language work, right? It's not a great idea to spend your time on add-ons to a language or new tools that haven't actually cemented themselves in the industry when you don't understand the fundamental concepts of the languages that are already deeply ingrained in that industry, right? So if you're making your way into web development, for instance, the best early focus is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Stick to the core languages. They're going to be there forever. And you want to get as much of an understanding as the basic tools and concepts in those languages as possible. That's going to be your best primary focus starting out. All right? So this was just a list of some of the things that I think of that I see very often in early developers as a difficulty. And I wanted to give a little bit of perspective from my experience to hopefully give you a leg up as you're diving into development and spot these things in yourself before you fall victim to it. If you can build up good habits from the start, you're going to be able to pick up new knowledge faster and faster over time. All right? Well, thank you for listening, everybody. I hope this was helpful. And if you are coming to LearningFuze to do more learning and code, I'm looking forward to seeing you. But for now, thank you for listening. Talk to you guys soon.